No man's life, liberty, or property are safe while the legislature is in session. Mark Twain. All right. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right. Today, we're going to talk about registries. But first up, I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up of where I am. Now, I'm back. I'm in the studio physically, but we've been talking about or I've been talking about getting myself in the Rumble Creator Program, and I have been streaming like a madman, like, at all kind of hours, whenever I can. So just to give you a quick update, I am trying to get in the Rumble Creator Program. You guys helped me get over that 100 subscriber threshold, so thank you so much. And then after that, I had to get Rumble Premium. Okay, no big deal. And then the last hurdle was 30 streaming hours in 30 days. And I am currently at 25.6. Now, it is a rolling 30 days. So if the back end goes from, a 2 hour to a 1 hour, I lose an hour, right? So that's kind of how it works. So I'm aiming to get my 30 hours in by Wednesday at noon, I believe is the cutoff. And if I'm successful, then I expect to be able to get into the program for the month of May. So I've been pushing it really hard. And that reminds me, I just want to tell you guys that you can go to youtube.libertydad.com or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com and you can check out, if you're listening on Spotify or wherever, you can check out the actual episodes. But more importantly, if you're listening via podcast or you only tune in the mornings, I just want you to know that I've done some weekend shows, and I even did last night what I called an evening's edge. I was going to do after hours, but it wasn't really that late. So I just went with evening's edge just to kind of make it stand out and say, like, look, this is different. This is out of the ordinary. But I did an evening's edge last night on culture of irresponsibility. So I talked about that. And then I had several weekend editions. So last weekend, I did morality and war. That was kind of bouncing off of Dave Smith and, his comments about the morality of war and then all the flack that he's been getting. So I added my voice to the mix on that. And then let's see, the week before that, I did immigration, one libertarian's perspective. So I kind of went into depth on that. I also talked about Podcastistan. That's a new term that's come out as a result of the Dave Smith, Douglas Murray debate. Basically, you can think of that as me podcast bro splaining how podcasts work in a sense to the intellectual elite who are criticizing podcasters for not being experts or speaking too much about a topic without being experts or without subjecting yourself to critical review from the experts. And I kind of went into it and I said, look, guys, it's not how it works here in Podcastistan. You want to come to our territory, you got to do things the way we do it. So make sure that you check out those episodes if you have not already. And they are lengthier. So like on the weekends and after hours and whatnot, I did not constrain myself to trying to keep it within about an hour. And to be honest with you, if I can get into the program, some things about the show are going to change. I don't know exactly just what yet because I have to maintain that 30 hours. And if I'm only streaming Monday through Friday, well, that's about 20 days, a month. And so that would give me 20 hours. So I'm either going to have to go longer, which I probably will, or I'm going to have to, or I guess, will have to stream outside of my normal Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. So we will see what changes are being made once I can get into the program. So that's just a quick update for everybody because I wanted you to know where we are. And by the way, my VA lady points out, great help with the show. She points out we also need to get Liberty Dad to 500 subs on YouTube so we can start putting ads and videos and receiving super chats. So if you want to super chat me up, we need some more subscribers on YouTube. Like help me build the channel so that I can keep delivering bill reviews and all my wisdom as a dad, a whole 6-year dad, right? Like I got lots of wisdom, right? Not very good grammar, but I got lots of wisdom. Yo. All right. So what are we talking about today? We're going to talk about some registries. Government loves registries. The I was amused when Donald Trump first ran for office because he kept pushing back on the media. And I was like, good, about time. And, we're not going to go into it, but I had some podcast episodes in the past where I was critical of the media for being a bit on the liberal side and beating up on conservatives and Republicans, and in an unfair way, in my opinion. And I went through that. Like I showed evidence. I presented my homework, if you will. But then it took a turn on me. Now, I wasn't supporting him necessarily. I was just amused by it. I was like, oh, this is funny. It's about time they took a swing back. I still think that the media should hold politicians accountable, all of them. Like, I should not know, like, if you're a famous reporter, it should be hard for me to determine where you stand on issues because you should be giving them hell to everybody, right? Republicans, Democrats, libertarians as well, right? Everybody, Green Party. Anytime you talk about somebody, they should be like, oh boy, what are they about to say? How are they going to criticize us? What have they dug up? That's what should happen. So I was amused by that from Trump. And then he started talking about databases for Muslims. Remember that? Probably don't remember that. It's been a while. I remember that. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like, that's no bueno there, buddy. I don't do registries. Like I don't think it's appropriate. Now, is there a time and a place for some database? Perhaps, like if you're a criminal, maybe, then they might say, okay, Fred Jones. I like to use Fred Jones. Fred Jones, he was just convicted of such and such violent crime. Put him in a database so that we know Fred Jones had this conviction, which, I mean, in a sense, they're going to document that anyway. So in that particular case, I'm okay with it. Like, okay, now we know that Fred Jones has been convicted of a crime, blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, he's been convicted of 2 crimes now. Look, this guy's a career criminal now. But for regular, everyday, average people, I'm a little hesitant. And ultimately, in our bill reviews, which we're going to do 2 today, my big goal is always to say, what problem are we trying to solve? That's where I go with this. So let's see. Where is it? I'm making some changes here. So the first bill that we're going to review here is HB 593, also known as the Pam Rock Act. So that's the bill that we're gonna look at. And so let's dive into some media and let's see what the mainstream news has to say. And let's pull up this first clip and see what we get.
Will vote on a statewide bill that would hold owners of dangerous dogs more accountable if they hurt a person or if they hurt an animal.
And this bill is known as the Pam Rock Act, and it's in response to her death when she was attacked by 5 dogs in Putnam County.
And tonight, our Hajabal spoke to the woman's family, and they are still very emotional about this, but want to see this thing go through.
Yeah, that's right. So I spoke to the family of Pamela Rock, and they tell me this bill is long overdue, and they feel that they'll be proud of the family pushing for this legislation.
We just don't want any more tragedies. Maria Rock and her family have been pushing for the Pam Rock Act ever since her death in 2022, when Rock was killed by 5 dogs while delivering mail in Putnam County. And we've got to get the responsible dog owners to take responsibility of their dog, whether they find that it's dangerous or not. People need to be aware that there's that possibility of a dangerous dog in there.
Okay, so I just can't. I'm a libertarian, and if you don't know anything about libertarians, we're an ornery bunch. We like to quibble with. We'll hear like one word, and we'll rant about it for like a week. Okay, from somebody. Like we're pretty bad. So I just want to point out what and look, all due respect to the victim's family and the victim, but we are talking about legislation, so we keep a scrutinous a word. We keep trying to think of what we keep a strong eye. I want to say like scrutinous, but I don't even know if that's a word. Anyway, I'll look it up later. But we keep an eye on legislation and we dig in and we try to do it objectively. Now, what she's saying is not legislation, but she pointed out, and it's relevant. You'll see it's relevant here shortly. She said, we need to get the responsible dog owners to take responsibility. If dog owners are not taking responsibility for their dogs, they are not responsible. So, and I think this is like, I'm nitpicking because we are talking about legislation. And we're going to look at that legislation. And I have some issues with it. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. When we're looking at things, we need to be sure that we're not calling people like saying, hey, framing it as if you're a good person, but then say good people need to do this thing that's right. Like it can be a conflict. You can't say, hey, you're a responsible dog owner, but you got to take responsibility. Well, no, they already are. That's what makes them a responsible dog owner. We need to separate responsible dog owners from irresponsible dog owners. And we have to define, what does that mean? If we're talking about law. Now, if we're just talking casually, if you come to my house and you hang out and we're like, yeah, that person's irresponsible, that gets a little bit more loose and it's okay. We're just having a conversation. All right. So I just want to point that out. And I know, like I have to be the bad guy here because this is the victim's family and I'm nitpicking, but again, legislation, we gotta take this stuff serious.
This bill will require owners of dangerous dogs to be kept in a secure enclosure. Warning signs must be posted, and the animal must be registered with the county. The dog owner will also be required to have $100,000 in liability insurance. Michael Bricker with Animal Care tells me what defines a dog as dangerous.
Okay, so this you need to pay attention, okay? Because what they're doing is they're saying, if you have a dangerous dog, then you must do these things. Or you could be liable, whatever, right? Like you could get in trouble. So that they're applying this to dangerous dogs. So first things first, what is a dangerous dog? And we'll look at this again in a minute, but just listen.
But the basics is a dog that has caused severe injuries, a dog that has bitten multiple times, broken bones, a dog that is just, a truly aggressive dog.
As this bill continues to make its way through the state legislature.
So, apologies, I meant to stop it a little bit sooner. So, did you notice that he said has? That's past tense. That will be useful here in a moment. Keep that in your mind.
Rock's family is hoping lawmakers will support the measure.
The reality of it, I can't imagine them not voting it because it's so prevalent out there in the state of Florida, especially in the country rural areas. They need to protect not only their constituents, but the visitors that come to Florida. They need to vote yes.
Now, this bill is still before the Florida House, and if signed into law, it can go into effect July of this year.
Okay, so that's an old media clip. So let's take a look, and we're going to see, we're going to go to a good site here. So this is the Fast Democracy. Remember, I talked about that in the last bill review, and I said, hey, go there. It's got everything in a really nice and neat manner for you to look at. So let's pull that up, and we'll see what we get. So it's this is HB 593. There was actually a legislation in the 2024 session, and that bill died in committee. So here we see that it has been introduced on February 13th, and then it was passed April 23rd in the House, and then passed the Senate April 28th. So literally just yesterday. And let's see, what else we got in here? Dangerous dogs requires rather than authorizes certain dogs to be confiscated, impounded, and held. Requires animal control authorities to provide certain information to potential adopters. Revises requirements for owners of dangerous dogs. Blah blah blah. So basically, just beefing up the statute, right? Like we've already got a statute in there. We're adding to it. All right, what else we got in here? You know what? Where's that tweets? I like that little feature. Let's see. Looking for tweets. Is there any tweets about this? None. We've put a space in there. What do we get? Any tweets? Any? No tweets found. Dangerous dogs. I like this. This is cool. You could just sit here like, nope. Okay. So if I went to Twitter or X, I could probably find some tweets related to this. So anyway, so who's pushing this? So this has been pushed by Judson Sapp, who is the Republican for District 20, co-sponsored by Webster Barnaby, a Republican out of 29. And then you've got a couple of other co-sponsors here. It doesn't list their specific party designation, but it's looking like this is a Republican bill. All right, so let's see. Here's some news articles that you can check out. All right, so here are the votes. The last vote, let's see here. Let's go back down here. So the Senate voted 36 yes, 0 no, other 2. That's interesting. I wonder if that's a Senate or if it's a subcommittee. No, it would have said committee. So it says Senate. And then it was 115-0 with 4 presumably abstains or maybe not present in the House. So it's getting favorable traction at our state House and Senate. That's what we need to know. So here's other information, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this is a nice little overview, but we're going to dig in a little bit more and we're going to find out what else we can learn from this. So let's put this up. Where's my Oh yeah, I wanted to, give me just a second. I forgot to add this to the list. So give me a second while I add it. Apologies, folks. Let's see what we got here. There we go. Okay. And there. All right. So if we do this, here we go. All right. So I got to do one more thing. Manual. Let's go back one. There we go. Okay. There. I forgot to set this one up this morning. Okay. So rather than just show you the bill, I'm going to show you the second bill, like the actual bill. But this one's 14 pages long, and a lot of it is just adding to existing statute. So I thought it would be easier just to put it up on the screen like this. So we're going to read what dangerous dog means from the bill. Like, it's good that the gentleman in the video told us about dangerous dog, but now we want to read, okay, like he said it, but he is not the law, right? So let's see what it says specifically, and then we're going to discuss this. So dangerous dog means any dog that, according to the records of the appropriate authority. So remember that word has. So it's a dog that's on record. Why would it be on record? Because something happened, right? This is an after the fact. Number 1, A, has aggressively bitten, attacked, or endangered, or has inflicted severe injury on a human being on public or private property. I'm going to come back to this in just a moment, but I want you to hear that. I want you to hear all three of them. B, has more than once severely injured or killed a domestic animal while off the owner's property. So if it gets loose and it kills a cat, it's considered a dangerous dog. Okay. My problem here is that, like, how many dogs like to go after birds? And if they happen to catch one, I mean, they're not going to play with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're aggressive in a very dangerous sense. Like, my dog tries to chase that. My dog is a golden retriever. It's a she, and super sweet. Like, she barks when people come, but I feel like when people come into the house, if they can get into the house and get past the barking, she's gonna go into like love mode. But she does like to try to chase the squirrels, and she tries to chase birds. And what would she do if she caught one? I don't know, but she would probably injure it, because if she caught one, well, she doesn't have opposable thumbs. She only has her mouth. So if she grabs onto a bird and she severely injures it, like, if, let's say, she gets loose, I open the door and she bolts out after a bird and she happens to catch it. And she's like, I got this bird. Well, now my dog's going to be potentially considered a dangerous dog for that. So I'm not really sure that this works. Let's go to the next criteria here. So this next criteria is, has, when unprovoked, chased or approached a person upon the streets, sidewalks, or any public grounds in a menacing fashion or apparent attitude of attack, provided that such actions are attested to in a sworn statement by one or more persons and dutifully investigated by the appropriate authority. I don't have a problem with this one. This one said, because it includes that little clause, when unprovoked. Okay. So it's like, if my son is walking the dog and somebody comes up and is harassing him, and then they let's say they slap him, right? And the dog recognizes, hey, you're not supposed to do that. And the dog bites him, right? The person, obviously. Well, that wouldn't be an aggressive dog, because the dog was provoked. Hey, you hit my owner. I'm here to protect the owner, right? So I'm okay with this. I don't see any issue here with this particular one. But let's continue on. There's a couple more elements from this bill that we want to take a look at. So the next one here, it goes on and it says, upon issuance of the final order classifying the dog as dangerous, or the conclusion of any appeal that affirms such final order. So, like, okay, we went through due process. You know what's weird? I'm sorry, folks. I have to point this out. I feel like we're giving dogs more due process than we are immigrants. Just saying. Like, we spelled it out here. We're like, all right, we're going to classify the dog. It has to have an investigation to determine if you're an aggressive dog. And the owner can appeal that. Okay. And then once that appeal has been concluded and there's a final order, then you have to, quote, obtain liability insurance coverage in the amount of at least $100,000 to cover damages resulting from an attack by the dangerous dog causing bodily injury to a person, and provide proof of the required liability insurance coverage to the Animal Control Authority for the area in which the dog is kept, right? And then elsewhere it talks about a registry. So then we've got, and then I think there's one more snippet here there we go. Here's this last snippet. If the dangerous dog is surrendered to a public or private animal shelter, a humane organization, or an animal control agency operated by a humane organization, or by a county, municipality, or other incorporated political subdivision. Basically, if you give the dog up to some entity that collects dogs, basically, the entity must post signage on the dog's enclosure to inform potential adopters that the dog has been declared dangerous, and inform any adopter of the dog owner requirements under this section. I actually don't have a problem with this part either. Like, because I've taken before we got our dog, I took my son to the Humane Center Society, and we would check out dogs and we would walk by the cages. Now, on some of those cages, it would say it would tell you whether it was kid friendly, I believe, or it had something that would kind of indicate hey, I might bite you, so be careful. And so okay, so I agree with that. I think you need to inform people, hey, you're coming here looking for a dog. You might be bringing your family, your kids. This one, is a bit aggressive. You might only want this one if you're single or if you don't have kids or if you don't have any other pets. Like, I think that is perfect information. In fact, when my wife and I, a past dog that we had, we were before my son was here, before he was born, and before my mother-in-law was here, we went to the dog pound and we were checking out dogs, and we almost got a dog, except for the lady. I jokingly say she made a mistake. We were getting ready to take this one particular dog, and she said, "Yeah, this one family was about to adopt him, and he snapped at their kid." And I was like, "We're done." And I was like, "Nope, end of story. You told me enough." And the reason was because even though we didn't have kids and we didn't have any other animals, our friends come over sometimes with their kids. And sometimes our friends would come over with their dogs. And so we needed a dog that was going to be friendly in the house to other people and potentially other animals. So we ended up not getting that dog. We ended up getting a stray that just by happenstance. And that dog turned out to be super duper wonderful. That dog's name was Daisy. Got cool pictures of her. It was a lot of fun having her. So anyway, I'm okay with this. I think you should, as a libertarian, my big thing is informed consent, right? It's not really consent if you're not informed. If somebody's holding out pertinent information that you would use to make your decision. So I'm okay with that. But let's go back to that very first one. This is the one that concerns me. Let's see here. So here it is. So the very first A, dangerous dog means any dog that, according to the records of the appropriate authority, A, has aggressively bitten, attacked, or endangered, or has inflicted severe injury on a human being on public or private property. Now, when I was using Grok to kind of help analyze the bill, and I kept questioning it, and I was like, hey, it seems like this reads where, let's say somebody comes onto my property, they're threatening me, and then my dog bites them. Well, then would they be classified as a dangerous dog? And according to Grok, because the whole of the legislation includes a lot of references to like investigation, Grok was saying like, look, this is, I recognize your concern. This is ambiguous. It could lead to, different, whoever's doing the investigation to be more subjective, right? And say like, oh yeah, I think this is a dangerous dog. No, I think so. In other words, Grok was like, yeah, I don't think so, but it's possible. So neither one of us are lawyers. So it's possible that it really all revolves around two things: whether or not the dog was provoked, and whether or not, who is making that decision, and how much flexibility do they have in making this determination? So, but mostly the provoked part, and having an investigation. So based on the fact that investigation was part of the requirements, Grok's final assessment was, hey, yeah, it's written ambiguously, but more than likely, if you're walking, then it would be considered a provoked attack, which is different than an unprovoked attack. But I still don't like it. I like, when I read a bill, and I'm not a lawyer, but when I read a bill, I want it to be clear cut. And you can always find some loophole or something that somebody forgot. You could never write anything that covers everything. But the way I look at it is, if I can see a problem, then perhaps there is a problem, right? Like that's, and look, you as Joe Citizen, you need to, look and read these bills and question things, even though you're not a lawyer, because these bills, this legislation is what governs you. And our system of government is governance by consent. Libertarians, quiet. I know what you're about to say. But so you need to be able to say, like, I do or don't consent to this. And if they're writing stuff that's ambiguous, they need to clean up the language. They need to communicate that, because ultimately they've already passed it in the House and the Senate, but ultimately I could call up my senator, my state senator, my state representative, and I could be like, hey, vote against this bill. I think it's a bad bill. It's ambiguous, blah, 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 right? They're supposed to, in theory, vote based on their constituents' request, like what their constituents want. That's how it's supposed to work. So even though we're not lawyers, we can plainly read this and say, I think this looks ambiguous to me. Tell me what I'm missing. And if lawyers come back and they say, we hear what you're saying, but because of these other elements within the bill, that's not a concern in terms of legality. You're not going to end up having your dog on a registry, just because it got loose and it bit, it went after a duck, because dogs like ducks, right? They like chasing birds and animals. And if they happen to catch one, again, they're not catching it to play necessarily. They're going to be rough with it, and it's probably going to harm the animal. But that's not like, it would be different if we're talking about one of those crazy dog attacks that we've seen on video, where like a dog has got like another dog in its mouth and it's shaking it, and the owners are trying to get it off, and there's like, no, I'm going to kill this dog. Like, that would be, in my opinion, a dangerous dog, or at least an aggressive one. So, but again, this is important because the requirements are, one, that you'll be in a registry. So anytime the government has information on you, you should know why. And I'm not a fan of registries. So I will fight back virtue on every one of them, because I'm like, look, you don't need to know this information, because government has shown itself time and time again that they cannot handle that kind of information. They abuse it somewhere. And then secondly, there's a requirement to have $100,000 worth of insurance. So again, it's really important that we understand, what does dangerous dog mean? What are the situations for which it would be classified as a dangerous dog and it would not be? Now, the other reason that I have a problem with this bill is I am never, ever a fan of naming a bill or creating a bill after an incident. So let's take a look here real quick, because they said this is the Pam Rock Act. So let's talk about the Pam Rock story, what happened to her. And let's see here. Where's my There we go. Let's go here. I think this is the story that I want. Why is things moving slow? Things are moving slow, hopefully. All right. I don't know what's going on. Let's see here. Uh-oh. Oh no, I think we're good. No, is it? We're having an issue. I think the news site is causing a crash on my browser, so I may not be able to pull it up. I'm gonna try, and we'll see. We'll see if I can. We'll see if we can't salvage this. Let me try to close this browser real quick, and we'll open it right back up. Let's see. Is it gonna work? Close the browser. Let's see here. Want to close. All right. So give me a second here while we try to figure this out. In fact, maybe, I don't know. Do I want to go to commercial break? No, I'm just going to trying to close this and reopen it. We'll see if we can't end that task. There we go. Okay. So let's see if we can't bring that right back up again. I think the browser crashed because of, news sites and whatnot. They got to have all this nonsense and garbage. So let's see. Okay. There we go. I think we got it back. I think we're good. So here's the news story. Sorry about that, folks. So this is the news story from, that's why. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do, let me do this way. I will just read it from a different browser. I'm not going to try to pull it up. So we'll just read it to you guys. All right. Investigators, and this is again from 2023, February. Investigators find no wrongdoing after postal worker dies in Putnam County dog attack. Pamela Rock was mauled by 5 dogs that got out of a fenced-in yard in August of 2022. All right. News4Jax learned new information regarding a dog attack that resulted in the death of a 61-year-old mail carrier in Putnam County in August of last year. Pamela Rock was mauled by 5 dogs that got out of a fenced-in yard after the Putnam County Sheriff's Office said the postal worker's mail truck had broken down on a dirt road. The I-team has learned that federal and local investigations didn't find wrongdoing by Rock's employer or the dog's owner. The dog's owner was not found to have done anything wrong. That's weird. Because we just made a bill that will presumably stop this, right? But first and foremost, the bill doesn't even go into effect until after a dog is bitten, because you can't label a dog dangerous until it has already attacked somebody. So that's your first problem. So the dog basically getting a freebie, because, like, hey, you get a freebie, and then after that, we'll label you a dangerous dog, and then your owner has to do all these things, right? But you still got that one. Continuing on. The state attorney's office told the I-Team that it is not filing charges against the dog owner, while an OSHA investigation did not result in any safety violations. A memo from the state attorney's office explains that the dog's owner, this is juicy right here. The dog's owner tried to surrender them twice, including 10 days before the attack. Wait, what? We've got a bill that says if your dog attacks somebody, you got to get $100,000 worth of insurance. You go on a registry and your dog's labeled a dangerous dog. Okay? And what does that do about, there's nothing in there about, hey, you know what? Maybe we should make it easier or improve the process for when a dog owner says, hey, I would like to surrender these dogs. They're a problem. In all, the memo finds there were at least 4 incidents involving the dogs in the months prior. So let's just recap this. Dog owner has dogs, has 4 incidents. Somewhere in there, twice reached out and said, I would like to surrender these dogs. I cannot take care of them. Nobody comes to pick them up. Then a 5th incident happens and ends in somebody's death. Then they pass legislation and go, man, we just need to force people to get insurance and we're going to put them in a database if they can't be responsible dog owners. And in that video, did you hear anybody talking about, by the way, if an animal control shelter does not act when somebody calls them and says, I'm having trouble with these dogs or this dog, they can be punished. Isn't that kind of weird? This is what I mean when we need to read bills and evaluate them. This bill would not have protected Pam Rock. It would have not prevented her death. Because the man wanted to get rid of the dogs in the first place. And it would seem that the government wasn't being very dutiful in helping him. So who's negligent here? Well, it could be him, but the report from 2023 determined that he was not at fault. Okay, so yeah, the dog should be on a registry. And if the dogs had been on a registry from one of the 4 incidents prior, and he got his $100,000 insurance, okay, you know what happens? Pam Rock's family gets money. That's it. That's all that happens. They get money. I'm sorry. It's not nice to say, right? We want to do right by the dead, but we're not. This is just a bill that's just like, all right, you're going to pay some money, but 1, the dog gets a freebie. And then 2, the name of the bill is because somebody died and it wouldn't have helped him. That's a problem. All right, let's see. In February 2022, the memo says the dog's owner called Putnam County Animal Control Shelter and left a message saying he needed to surrender some dogs because he could no longer care for them. Like, they had a message. It's not like he even called and talked to somebody who forgot about it, which would be just as bad. He left a message. Like, you have a recording of it now. Like, all these people could listen to it. Animal control staff told investigators no one ever returned his call or followed up with them. Oh. Animal control. The Putnam County Animal Control. You know who's at fault here? If you said the government, Putnam County Animal Control, yes, you're correct. It wasn't working last night. I pushed the button and it was like silence. So, but the bill doesn't address any of that. It doesn't say like, hey, if you don't address a call, like if somebody calls and said, you need to address this, I've got a dog to surrender. It doesn't say you have to take the dog within 5 business days. It doesn't have that requirement in it. And the video, they make no mention of it. Like, nobody's talking about the animal control shelter. They are the ones that failed. This is a bill that's going to impose upon citizens because government was incompetent. That's why. Right? The owner already tried to get rid of them. I mean, can he shoot them? Probably not. Probably get in trouble for that. I don't actually know. Might not. So 11 days later, the memo says the dogs escaped and attacked a 50-year-old man who was taken to the hospital. A deputy told the dog's owner to quarantine the dogs and that animal control would contact him. However, Putnam County Animal Control claimed they never received the police report and that they weren't contacted. Great. So now not just one time did government fail, but somewhere two did. Either the officer did not submit that report like he was supposed to, or they did receive it and they are lying. So somewhere government failed twice. Twice. On August 10, a woman called police after she said one of the dogs escaped and attacked her car. The car was damaged, the state attorney's office said, but no one was hurt. Law enforcement referred the case to animal control, which confirmed the dog owner had taken measures to fortify his fence. It was then, the memo says, he tried to surrender dogs to animal control for a second time, but the request was declined, quote, based on Putnam County Animal Control's assessment of the situation. Oh, see, that was August 10, right? February, he left a message. Then August 10, I'm sorry. Then let's see here, 11 days later. So let's walk through what's going on here. February, he calls and leaves a message. Nobody follows up. 11 days later, the dog attacks a 50-year-old man. A police report is supposedly sent to the animal control shelter. A few months later, August 10, a woman called police and said, yo, this dog attacked my car. And the Putnam County Animal Control Assessment said, no, we don't need to take these dogs in. 10 days later, investigators determined the dogs escaped the fence their owner had patched with rocks, logs, cinder blocks, and other materials in an attempt to keep them contained, and attacked Rock. The 5 dogs have since been euthanized. The sheriff's office had recommended charges of misdemeanor recklessness on the part of the dog owner, but the state attorney's office investigation found he wasn't reckless based on the actions he had taken to get rid of the dogs and fix the fence. Oh, so Pam Rock died because the government failed multiple times. Again, repeating this just so it's clear. February. Hey, ring, ring, ring. Where's my phone? I'm going to pretend. Ring. Hey, I'd like to, my name is Fred Jones. I would like to report an issue with my dogs. You need to come and get them. I can't control them anymore. Thanks. Bye. My number's 555-555-5555. All right. So then they never call him back. 11 days later, the dog attacks a man. The police writes up a paper, sends it in. Nothing. Supposedly sends it in, right? Allegedly. So got to figure that out. Nothing. Then the owner calls back a second time, says, hey, I got to get rid of we need to get rid of this dog. Just attacked a car. And they're like, yeah, no, you're fine. The logs and the bricks that you put up on your fence, that's good enough. And the dog, I mean, it's just a car, right? Hey, but I need to get rid of these dogs. And then people wanted to charge him for recklessness. Are you crazy? Why don't you charge your own damn self? The government is the one that failed here, not the man, multiple times. The government caused the death of Pam Rock, and nobody wants to talk about that. That's horrendous. And then you're going to go and punish citizens based on an incident where it wasn't even the citizen's fault and where nothing in the bill would have prevented the death. Nothing. Because the only change that would have been made would be, okay, now the dog and the owner are in a database somewhere, and you have to get insurance. That's it. That's what would change. Not the fact that, hey, I called you to take these damn dogs, and you didn't take them. You even declined at one point. That's a problem. So for this bill, I mean, I'm failing it because it's not going to solve the problem. It doesn't address the core issue at hand. It's got some, I feel like some of the language is ambiguous. So it's unclear to me because if my son is out walking his dog and somebody attacks him, right, I want the dog to bite that person. And I want to be sure that the dog is not going on a registry because it was defending my son or even my wife or me, right? If the dog gets loose and grabs a duck, as what I would expect a normal dog to do, I don't want it going on a registry because Like, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a dangerous dog. Dogs go after other animals like that. That's what they do. Now, if the dog attacks another dog or, you're like, I guess there's some ambiguity in my view because I'm distinguishing between like a domesticated animal, somebody else's dog, and, a bird or a chipmunk or a squirrel or whatever. But who has a dog that doesn't want to chase after another animal? Not very many people. So yeah, Bill failed it. Let's check out some commercials. Let's check out some comments here. See what y'all are saying. Let's see. I picked yes, Time Surfing Alien points out 18 subs needed. Thank you for spreading the word. Keith Garrett says I picked the wrong week to give up Liberty Dad. See the movie Airplane. You guys are funny. Let's see what else we got in here. The let's see here. My VA lady says I think it was in SJC, but someone, not dog's owner, put 2 dogs in someone's backyard in a side gate. Dogs went into the house and killed a small dog. Who was liable there? That's an interesting question. I would argue that the person that put them in there, because if like I'm assuming that these 2 dogs went into the wrong backyard. Like this is not the house that they belong in. That's my guess. Let's see here. I got some haters. Liberty Dad's face looks like it was eaten by a dangerous dog. Perhaps. And guess what? You are here staring at it. That's a you problem. I mean, like, if my face is that bad looking, then go look at somebody else's face that's prettier. I mean, trust me. Look, I know. Like, there are prettier faces out there. And you chose mine. You problem. Let's see. Yeah, my VA lady confirms it. Yeah, it was the wrong backyard. Time Surfing Alien. Oh, gee, government failure. No way, he said, rolling his eyes. I know, right? The government fails, and then they want to punish the citizens because they're incompetent. Heck to the no. All right, folks, let's take a little bit of a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about this next one, which is even goofier. I promise you. It's just I can't with legislation and these politicians. I really can't. Hey, Liberty fam, do me a favor. If you enjoy the show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. By the way, if you want to support the show, head over to libertydad.locals.com and sign up. For $5, you can be part of this show. There, I'll engage supporters of the show. We'll discuss topics that you want me to talk about, response videos that you would like to see, or anything related to the show. And I'll even have a monthly subscribers only episode. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. That's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. If you're a dad or you know a dad who has something to say, let's get connected. Episodes air live on Friday mornings or Friday evenings, whichever works best for dads. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, we're back to the show here. Okay, so what's next? What's this next one? Well, this one is, and let me throw that up on their screen, Resolution 2025-293. Now, you know resolutions, they're just like, it's like when government says, we believe this thing. It's not enforceable. And this is a landlord registry here locally in Jacksonville. Now, anybody that knows me, they know my wife's a real estate agent. We're real estate investors. The idea of a landlord registry, on top of the fact that I don't like registries, definitely gets my attention. So let's play a quick video, and we're going to learn a little bit about this landlord registry idea that our local city council member, Jimmy Peluso, has put out. By the way, when I first saw this, I retweeted an article written by A.G. Gankarski, and I'll read the article on air here in a minute. But he had some interesting things to say. And I was like, look, Jimmy, you want to come on the show? You can defend this idea if you want, or we can have a public debate. So I might harass him for that. See if we can't get a little debate out of this. It'll be fun. But here's the video.
Happening tomorrow, a Jacksonville City Council member is expected to introduce a resolution encouraging Mayor Donna Deegan to create a landlord registry for the city of Jacksonville.
The councilman who drafted the legislation says it's all about accountability and open communication. News for Jacksonville, Ashley Harding's here. Ashley, this councilman also cited an interesting UNF study.
That's right, Joy. Very interesting indeed. Last year, the Jax Rental Housing Project through UNF named Duval County the eviction capital of the state. And for Councilman Jimmy Peluso, it's time to begin the conversation of adding a registry.
No, it's not.
That's why he told me he's doing this as a resolution to begin that conversation and hear from people about how it should look.
Okay. I got you, Jimmy. Let me tell you how it should look. The paper should look empty. Blank, nothing, no registry is needed. And I'm going to show you why. I'm going to pick apart your own resolution here. I got you, Jimmy, but you're not really, he's not my council member. I'm in a different district, but it would be, I will be reaching out to my council member and I will point out, I'll send him this episode. I'll be like, no, don't you dare vote for it. All right, let's watch.
Looking at this page on FloridaRising.org, it's hard to ignore the eye-catching headline at the top. Your landlord knows who you are. Do you know who your landlord is? And here's another eye-catching headline.
Jacksonville seems to be the eviction capital of Florida, and there's got to be a reason to that.
Councilman Jimmy.
Anybody catch that one? This is the guy who introduced the resolution, and he said, like, he's encouraging the mayor to create a landlord registry. And he says, there's got to be a reason. Huh. You're right. There's got to be. And if you don't know what it is, what problem are you actually solving? Like, wow, we got a lot of evictions here. Must mean a problem. By the way, can I point out something? Because they're like, Jacksonville is the eviction capital of Florida. Just want to throw this out there. As long as evictions are a thing, somebody will have the title of eviction capital. Somebody has to be number one. And yeah, you might say, well, and we'll get into it. You might say, well, yeah, but it's number one by a great distance compared to number two. Okay. That still doesn't tell me if there's an actual problem that needs to be addressed and if this addresses said problem. Doesn't tell me that just yet. Those are just numbers. And anybody that's watched this show knows that there are multiple ways to look at numbers. Let's continue.
Peluso says when it comes to landlords and housing in Jax, he hears a lot from people in the community.
I hear things about absentee landlords. I hear things about getting kicked out with a moment's notice. And for those that don't have the tools available to them to kind of fight back against it, it's easy to kind of pick on folks.
And that's why Peluso believes Jacksonville should have a landlord registry. In his resolution, the councilman says more than 40% of Duval County residents rent the homes where they live. And a public registry improve accountability and communication to more easily locate landlords in times of emergency and provide tenants with insight as to the condition of their rental properties. As for what a registry would look like, Peluso says this resolution before council would begin that conversation.
I'm trying to present it to my colleagues for us to come together, with community activists, with
I'll be there.
Complex owners, with those who are landlords, and just kind of figure out what works.
What works is if government would stop doing things. Y'all just be making stuff up. Don't worry, I'll show you. I'm going to back up my words.
This is something that's affecting a lot of people.
But not everyone is convinced.
The question I always have for legislation like this is what problem does it solve?
Oh, wow. Wow. I promise you, I only listened to like about half of this. I didn't even know he was going to say that. I promise you. I know you're not going to believe me. I promise you. But if you go back, you will see that I have actually said that very same thing on most legislation that I talk about. I'm like, what problem are you actually trying to solve? I don't want to hear just a bunch of numbers like, oh, wow, these numbers, and they look scary. 40% of people are renting. Okay. And is that in itself represent a problem? If so, how? Why is that a problem? Right? I want to hear problem that there is, that the law doesn't address, that we need, like this idea of like, well, we need to give people more tools. Okay. Why? Why do they need more tools? Why do you need to do this? Right? Because government, when you create a tool, clever phrasing there, but when you make a tool, what that really is force of law. Force. You can force people to comply. You can do that through financial punishment. You can do it by restricting their freedom, AKA throwing them in jail, right? There are any number of ways. You can deny them, depending on what the legislation is, you might deny them an application or a certificate or something, that allows them to do something, right? Like I could say, hey, can I have a permit to build this house? No, you cannot. Here's why, right? Like you can deny somebody something that permits them to do something. So there's any number of ways. So therefore, if you're going to punish people or you're going to restrict their freedoms, you have to have a problem to solve. And without a problem to solve, I'm not even sure that you need to be having a conversation. What is your conversation about? You haven't even identified a problem and say, here's a problem that we might need to address. Here's how I would do it. If I were a city council member, I would say, here's a problem, and here are some ways that we need to address it. We can address it this way, which leaves it in the free market or society for them to deal with. Here are some ways that we can deal with it in government. And then I can make a decision and say, I think in this case, it's better to leave it in the private sector, in the public hands. They can deal with it. Or I might say, you know what, in this particular case, we need legislation because, for whatever reason, doing it in the free market wouldn't work, or, whatever. Maybe there's an issue, right? Now, for me, those times are going to be very, very few. So for all my libertarian peers, I'm not an anarchist. So I have already accepted that, yes, there will be some government role somewhere. But I promise you, it is way, 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 way tinier than most bureaucrats, well, pretty much all bureaucrats would appreciate. The government is the size of a beach ball. I want it the size of a marble. That's the kind of guy I am. So let's continue.
So talked to Paul Howard with the Florida Landlord Network. He said while not every landlord is perfect, there's typically just one reason for why people are evicted.
The suggestion is that landlords are just willy-nilly throwing people out of their houses. And that's just not true. And in fact, landlords don't ever want to do that. It's a very expensive process.
He is absolutely correct. I've had some videos, like there's a video I made where some guy was like, landlords are, what did he say? What did he call it? Parasites or something like that. And he's like, owning land is immoral. And he said all these crazy things. And I disputed him. A lot of people have a lot of misunderstandings about what landlords actually do and what they actually want. But this man, Paul Howard, he's 100% correct. As a landlord, as somebody that knows landlords, the very last thing we want is to evict somebody, because it is costly and timely. It costs money, it costs time. And I don't want to spend either one of them when I could just have somebody there that's decently taking care of the house. You don't even have to take care of it like that great, right? You scuff up the wall, blah, 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 no big deal. Maybe you don't clean it the way that I would prefer you to clean it, whatever, as long as you're not really damaging the property, you pay your bill on time and we're cool. We'll let it go. Like we'll let it go, but we'll let you stay. Like that's what we actually want. We just want someone that's going to pay their bills and not destroy the friggin' house. If I evict somebody, every time I have to do more work. Every time I have to repaint some walls at a minimum. I may have to replace certain things. I have to go through the eviction process because very frequently it's not like I just walk up and say, hey, you're evicted. And they're like, all right, you're right. I need to get out. And then there's like, no, you have to go to court and you have to go through that process. Probably going to have to hire a lawyer, right? To help you make sure that the process is done correctly. So it's going to cost all this money. Then you might have to try to collect if at all. You might, like if they're past due a couple of months or a month, probably not a couple months, but a month, that's money you're not getting. Then you have the time that you have to invest. Let's say it takes, 3 weeks to, from the time that I get them out to the time that I'm ready to put up the sign that says for rent. That's 3 weeks of time that I'm not making money, but I'm paying money because my mortgage on that house doesn't stop because I don't have a renter. Right. And so then I put all the money into fixing things up, whatever. Then I have to advertise it. Right. So maybe I rent it out myself. Maybe I hire somebody to do it. Maybe I have a company that does these kind of things for me, whatever, there's various processes for it. Then I have to go through and take all these applications and evaluate them. Then I got to decide. Then we got to determine when they're going to come in, and then once they finally get in, we sign, we sign a contract, and then they finally make their payment at some point. Right. So it could be easily a month or two or even longer that the house sits empty, that I'm paying a mortgage, fixing the house, and not bringing any money. So yes, he is correct. We do not want to evict people because evicting people costs money. And so when people are like, oh, them greedy landlords, yes, we're greedy. We're so greedy that we would actually rather you stay in the friggin' house and just pay your bill. It's not hard to understand.
So if people don't pay their rent, they're going to be evicted.
Yes.
And we also received a statement from Mayor Donna Deegan's office. It reads, a landlord registry has been previously recommended by the Jacksonville City Council's Special Committee on Critical Quality of Life Issues and the Mayor's Transition Subcommittee on Affordable Housing. We look forward to a meaningful discussion on how this recommendation could be implemented in a way that is productive for the entire community. Now, the councilman is set to introduce his proposed resolution at council tomorrow. If you'd like to take a closer look at the resolution, you can find it inside this story on our website, newsforjax.com.
All right. Well, as it turns out, I would like to take a closer look. So let's bring that up on the screen here. Let's see here. We're going to go to, let's read the article first. So let me put that up on the screen while I got that. So there we are. Here's the article from A.G. Gankarski. I saw it yesterday. I retweeted him, or I retweeted it and tagged him. Here's what it says. Opinion. Landlord registry plan represents, quote, thoughts and prayers for renters. Sometimes I love AG. I love that. That's a great headline. It's just a beautiful headline. And he does a really good, how I was saying earlier that it should be hard to figure out your politics. There are times when AG sounds very much like he's siding with Republicans. Then there's times that he sounds like he's siding with Democrats. And then there are times it sounds like, wait a minute, are you a libertarian? Like seriously, I'm not joking. And so I like this. I mean, I feel like I kind of have an idea of his political leanings, but I'm not really sure. And that's one of the reasons why I like him. All right. So anyway, let's see what he says. Jacksonville City Council member Jimmy Peluso's pitch to create a local landlord registry is a sign of the times in a number of ways. Let me make this a little bit more bigger on the screen. Make sure you guys can see it, if you want to read along or whatever. Okay, so there we go. All right, perfect. That's better. It is a well-meaning effort, but ultimately sound and fury, signifying nothing except a bipartisan commitment to symbolism over substance. See what I mean? Sounds like a libertarian already. That's how I would talk about most bills. In a superficial sense, it's good policy to deal with the realities of a city that has changed in recent decades, even years. In a more meaningful sense, though, it leaves inequities and unaddressed and spotlights an inability of local government to deal with structural imbalance that drives the political process. Peluso, a staunch ally of Mayor Donna Deegan, wants the executive branch to create the registry and thereby, quote, provide a public platform for transparency and accountability for landlords and tenants, end quote. Go down. Let me see here. This is a useful tool in some ways, especially given the increased concentration of property into the hands of a small group of owners. In the waning days of the Joe Biden administration, the Department of Justice targeted institutional landlords, and including 2 who have 21 complexes between them, for colluding to keep rents high. All right, we're not going to address that issue, but from my perspective, from a libertarian perspective, you should be able to charge whatever the market will bear, period. And if people can collude, I would allow that. However, there's a broader conversation of what other things would be allowed, such as more competition, which fights back against this colluding. All right. So anyway, time will tell, of course, both about whether that suit continues forth in the Pam Bondi era and whether even institutional landlords can conspire to keep rents high amid what appears to be a global recession in the making. Peluso's resolution would allow, at least in theory, for the institutional landlords and smaller operators alike of the city to be taken to task for various practices. Florida Rising, a left-of-center activist group, says that ideally it would allow for true accountability. Okay. The Jacksonville City Council has the power, there is being quoted right here, by the way. The Jacksonville City Council has the power to require housing operators and landlords in Jacksonville to obtain a license to conduct business in this city. No, 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 and no again. A landlord registration process would allow council members to have a clear understanding of the rental housing inventory in our city and ensure that landlords provide safe, quality housing and receive updated education and resources on how to successfully operate rental units that meet high standards. No, no, I'm going to do it again. And no, I'm going to do it one more time. No. Okay. A clear understanding of rental housing inventory. Let me just, City Council, it is not your job to know about inventory. That's not your role. Okay? Now, you can say, hey, we want to ensure that landlords provide safe, not quality, but safe housing. All right? That you can do that. You can say, hey, look, if you're going to rent to somebody, like it has to be safe. You can't rent them, a roof that might collapse on their children while they're sleeping. Like, I'm okay with that kind of a rule. Like, that's fine, right? Safety. But quality, that's subjective. How do I know? Okay, if you're not in Jacksonville, the north side is going to be your poorer area. And then you have Ponte Vedra, which is where all the wealthy people live. Quality is going to vary between the north side, people that live up around that area, in the bad parts at least, and then the Ponte Vedra area. It's also going to vary in between. So you've got like South Side and you got other, like all these areas are going to have, like the people that live there are going to have a slightly different view of what it means to be quality. You might think of it as upper, lower, and middle class. They're all going to define what constitutes quality differently. Now, certainly, most everybody would love to have the quality of Ponte Vedra, the wealthy areas. But that's just not feasible because they can't pay for it. So, no, government doesn't have a job to worry about quality. Safety, fair. I'm good with that. And then education and resources on how to successfully operate rental units that meet high standards. Oh, okay. Jimmy Peluso. What level of expertise, I hate using that word now that Dave Smith or Douglas Murray has ruined it, but what expertise do you have to determine what is successfully operating a rental unit? What expertise do the rest of City Council have? Do they all have properties and have they published their ideas and had their ideas, evaluated and, by other people and said, yep, these are quality ideas. You guys know what you're talking about? No, because Congress, state house assemblies, city councils, mayors, they're generally not experts in the things that they govern, which is why we should limit them. I mean, they're not even experts in governing. And you want to tell us how to manage a property? Like, you can't even govern correctly. The constituents of Jacksonville know that this registry will be beneficial to landlords, renters, and the city of Jacksonville code enforcement alike. The group cheers. Okay. Number one, I seriously doubt that any landlord is like, yeah, that would be a benefit to me. I need some education because I could be a better landlord. You know how I can make fun of that? Because once upon a time, I was the secretary for a local real estate organization called Jax REIA. I rub shoulders with a lot of people in this community that deal in real estate. My wife is an agent. We know, and she's also an investor. We know plenty of people through just her dealings and through the organizations that we both were officers of. She was an officer before I was. Okay. So we're very familiar with the process. We're very familiar with people in this business. We know how to manage a rental. We don't need your education. Now, it's not to say we don't need education. This is where libertarians make a mistake, is they often will say like, government shouldn't do that. And so people end up thinking that we don't think it's necessary. No, I think people do need to be educated. And there are plenty of opportunities. I have learned so much from Jack's RIA. So shout out to you guys and other organizations like here in town, right? Like there's multiple of them. I'm not going to try to name them all. But there's multiple organizations where you can go out and people will say, like, here's how you best manage your property. Here's what you should do. Here's how you prevent, liability. And here's how you do this. And here's how you deal with bad tenants. And here's how you keep good tenants. Here's how you find good tenants, right? Like there's all these different things. So the learning is there, and I absolutely agree with it. And we already have it. We don't need the city to try to take it up and mess it up. Kind of like, Putnam County did when they let a woman die because they're incompetent. So, but there's only so much a landlord registry can do. Now, this is back to AG Gankarski. Consider New York City, which requires licensing for property owners. It also has the highest rents in the country. A lot of never renovated units with electrical wiring and amenities that belong in museums rather than households in 2025. He is correct. Why? Because when the government gets in and they start saying, okay, you got to do this and this and this and this and this, these are what we determine to be quality, then what do? That raises the cost for landlords. What happens to that cost when it's raised? If you said it gets passed on to the consumer, the renters go to the head of the class, because you are absolutely correct. And that can't be blamed on Republicans. Finally, Democrats control the New York City Council and state government. And until Mayor Eric Adams renounced his party amid finding a new appreciation for Donald Trump amid his own legal issues, the mayor's office was Democratic also. In short, even in a city that's a global center of capital and culture, God help you if you are renting. Peluso's landlord registry proposal is also aspirational in the purest sense. The resolution notes correctly that Duval County was named the eviction capital of Florida last year by UNF's Jack's rental housing project, with 7 evictions filed in court for every 1,000 renters, double the number for Miami-Dade and Pinellas counties, and 34% of all eviction filings were concentrated within 100 buildings. See, this is exactly what happens. You get a couple people that appear to be or are bad actors, and the government's like, oh, we gotta have a bill. We need a bill. But then that bill applies to everybody. They did this with Airbnb, which we successfully fought back against. They were like, 1 or 2 houses keep getting all the complaints. And my wife, who is not even political, she hates politics, but she was invested in this because we had Airbnb units at the time. And she went and she was like, so I got a question. She was like, if it's only 1 or 2 people, it's only a small handful of the whole, why don't you just figure out a way to deal with those people? Why don't you work with them instead of making a law for everybody? Like, yeah. Cha-ching on the money there, wife. Yes, you are absolutely correct. I must be a good libertarian husband. Or she's just that smart and can figure this out. Whereas our politicians either cannot or ignore it. Probably a combination of both. All right. So yeah, like you need to deal with the troublemakers. Don't punish everybody because you got a couple wayward folks. All right. It's unclear what a registry can do about any of that. It could, in theory, warn people of eviction-happy property owners, but the resolution language doesn't contemplate that. Rather, it is intended to, quote, improve accountability and communication to more easily locate landlords in times of emergency and provide tenants with insight as to the condition of their rental properties, including any past violation or complaints, end quote. So I can tell people, hey, this guy doesn't care about his building's mold problem, plumbing issues, and so on. But it can't do much about the eviction crisis beyond offering information. See what I mean? We're not actually solving a problem because, one, they haven't even identified a problem. And we're going to talk about this eviction thing. Interestingly and surprisingly to this writer, homeownership has actually increased in the city in recent years, nearing 58%. That's up a few percentage points from a decade ago. While the trend is promising, it should be a policy priority to encourage even more home ownership for a variety of reasons. Okay, if that policy is deregulation, I agree. Probably that's where Mr. Gankarski and I are going to part ways. It's been known for many years that owner-occupied neighborhoods are inherently more stable than those dominated by rental stock. Also agree. Renters are more likely to move every year or two than homeowners who are locked into place, in some cases by favorable mortgage terms of the past, and who don't want to hazard transaction cost beyond that. The era of flipping houses is over. I don't know if I would say it's over, but it may be waning for a time being. As the ultimately doomed missing middle discussion in City Council revealed, residents are concerned about incorporating multifamily developments into historically owner-occupied stable neighborhoods. Older areas of town, including ones where mixed-use development was part of the plan decades ago, would not have been exempted. Okay, I think that's, we don't have to go through. It's almost, yeah, that's good. That's good. I like the very ending though. But the hollowness of the heart, at the heart of Peluso's proposal, is that politicians have little leverage over developers and institutional landlords, many of whom play heavily in local politics. It's a populist gesture, but it's one that deliberately papers over a lack of true populism in the local political process or willingness to meaningfully confront the permanent capitalist class on behalf of those least able to fight its depredations. Okay, so we'll end on disagreement there, Mr. Gankarski. And that's okay. No big deal. Okay, so let's pull up his bill. And I mean, it's only a page. We're going to pull up the whole thing. We're going to take a quick look at it, and we're going to see. You know, I think I can make that a little bit bigger. So let me do that. Let me make me a little bit smaller here, and then we'll make this bill a little bit bigger so that if you want to read it off the screen, you can. So let's see here. We'll go here and no, we're going to go here, and we're going to make it just a wee bit bigger. There we go. You know, I don't know if I got to work on this. I'm going to work on the sizing here. We'll just make me a little bit more on the smaller side. All right. So there we are. All right. So let's see what it says. I'm going to read from the bill here. Whereas more than 40% of Duval County residents rent the home in which they live. Okay. Not relevant. Whereas all rental properties in Duval County should meet maintenance and safety standards. Okay with this. I don't have a problem. Safety is a good thing. Whereas a public landlord registry would assist the city in monitoring the rental housing inventory. We discussed that. None of your business. Regulating inspections to ensure that landlords provide safe housing units. Again, like if you want to have inspections, that's fine. You can do it without registries, and you can do it without certifications and any other, licensing and you could just say like, look, if you have a rental property, once a year, we want to inspect it. That's it. And you know what you can do? We're going to publish a report. That's what you do. We're going to inspect it, and we will publish a report. On May 1st, 2025, we inspected 123 Mulberry Lane. It passed or it failed. Here are the problems with it. And so then if you want a database, you can do that. I mean, they already have information on all the housing in the community anyway. So you can create a database and say like, look, we did an inspection. Here's what we found. Bam, done. Right? Let's continue. Regulating inspections to ensure landlords provide. Yep, I'm okay. I'm okay with having inspections. Whereas a public landlord registry would improve accountability and communication to more easily locate landlords in times of emergency. Okay, so what emergencies have you had, and how often are you unable to contact the landlord where you have to? How often does that actually happen? And by the way, have you talked to actual people in the real estate community, Jimmy? Because I don't know if you know this or not, but we already have ways of finding out who owns a property, because a lot of us like to go out and buy properties and renovate them. That requires us to find out who the owner is. So perhaps if you're just curious, you could use that path rather than try to write up legislation that has a registry for that information. And like, anyway, provide tenants with insight as to the condition of their rental properties. So again, the idea I just proposed would do that, including any past violation or complaints. Again, you could do that as well. Anytime somebody calls the city to complain about a house, the city can say, we're going to take action. We're going to go out and look, and we're going to investigate. Here was the result of our investigation. So then I, as a renter, I can go up and say, 123 Mulberry Lane. Oh, wow. Looks like they passed their last inspection, but they've had 14 complaints in the last year. Maybe that's not the house that I want to be in. Or maybe they can investigate further, and they can say, here's the information that I found about this particular property. Is this you? And if it is, can you explain why there have been 14 complaints before I become a renter to you? I'm okay. I love informed consent. So I would be like, if the government's going to do anything, just collecting information and putting it out there for people. No punishment. Just here's what we found. Here's what you need to know. You do with it as you will. That would be great. That's fine. I have no issue there. Whereas, this is the fun part, Duval County was named the eviction capital of Florida last year by UNF's Jack's Rental Housing Project, with 7 evictions filed in court for every 1,000 renters, double the number for Miami-Dade and Pinellas counties. 34% of all eviction filings were concentrated within 100 buildings. Okay, I want to show you something because I happened to go through that same report. Let me show you what I found here. Let's see, is it this one? Let's see, where is it here? Did I not load it up? I may not have loaded it up. Give me just a second. I will get to it. Here we are. Boom, bada bing. And let's see here. Bam. So here we go. So this is from that same report. This is what it said toward the end. In short, Duval is the eviction filing capital of the state. While we have not conducted any empirical analysis to determine what explains this variation, it should be noted that all these metropolitan areas, with the exception of Duval, had passed some form of tenants' Bill of Rights prior to having the state preempt those ordinances in 2023. There is evidence to suggest that local policies can reduce the level of eviction filing activity. So, number one, we don't even know why. Nobody's evaluated and said why. Perhaps it's possible that Jacksonville happens to have more bad renters than Miami. It might seem unlikely, but Miami is a huge city, and perhaps their real estate community has found ways to deal with bad renters, and they have to evict fewer people, right? Maybe it is that they have a Bill of Rights for tenants, and that Bill of Rights somehow impacted evictions. I don't know, but it's clear here in the same document where we get that, 7 out of every 1,000? That same one, it says, we have not conducted any empirical analysis to determine what explains this variation. So they don't know. You're trying to start a conversation to presumably solve a problem that you have not identified and that you lack information on, right? Just because it's the number one doesn't in itself mean anything. It could be that you have bad landlords. It could be that you have bad tenants, a disproportionate number of bad tenants. It could be a combination of both. It could be something else entirely. Who knows what it is? But why do we want to have a conversation when you're coming to the table with half-assed research? I'm not saying Jack's Rental Housing has half-assed it. I'm saying Jimmy Peluso has. He doesn't have this information. What problem are you solving? Let's go back to our document here. We'll finish this up. It's only like a page. Whereas in 2022, the Critical Quality of Life Issues Special Committee recommended the creation of a landlord registry. Why? Again, what problem are you solving? What problem exists? And can you tell me how it cannot be solved without a registry? Like that's the only way. Whereas landlord registries have been implemented in Florida in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, Coral Springs, and Palm Coast. And so what? Are those communities are they more vibrant now? Are they better? They got better tenants? Do tenants stay there longer? Do they pay their bills more? Do they get away with more stuff? Were some of these registries tilted against the landlord in favor of the tenant, such that you can say, look, we've reduced the number of evictions. Yeah, but maybe you did it at a cost. Maybe you're covering for people that are acting poorly and need to be evicted. I don't know any of this. So the fact that they've been implemented means absolutely nothing. Be it resolved by the Council of City of Jacksonville, the City Council hereby encourages the mayor to establish a landlord registry for the city. So Jimmy lied, sort of, because in the video he said, we need to start the conversation. But here it said, we encourage the mayor to establish a registry. On the basis of what? It doesn't say the city council hereby encourages the mayor to initiate conversation to determine if a landlord registry would be a value add to the city of Jacksonville. It says no, to establish one. You're coming with your conclusion already ready. You already have your conclusion, but you didn't bring your homework to show your work. You didn't bring the paper to show your work and say, here's the evidence that says we need this registry. No, all you did was say, wow, those are some big, scary numbers, right? What was that number again? Yes, 7 evictions for every 1,000 renters. You're like, and that's double what Miami has. So we must be bad. No, that's not how it works. Who are the renters? Why are they such a problem? Or are landlords just being eviction happy? I mean, is that really the case? Do landlords just want to spend money? They're like, oh man, I'm so rich and wealthy. I'm keeping my thumb down on all these renters and I got so much money. You know what? F it. I'll just evict one. Who? And they throw a die and they're like, that house over there. 2323 Main Street. You're getting evicted. Why? Roll a dice. Sorry, man. I'm having fun. No, this is nonsense. Effective date. This resolution shall become effective upon signature by the mayor or upon becoming effective without the mayor's signature. I will be writing my council member and I will be telling them, no, do not vote yes on this. I explicitly oppose this resolution. It's garbage. I oppose the idea of the mayor establishing a landlord registry when we haven't even learned all the facts yet. And for God's sakes, can somebody run against Peluso whenever it comes up again? Because, if this is the kind of stuff that he's going to present, then he doesn't belong being in city council. Right? And look, I'm not just beating up on him because he's a Democrat. I say the same thing about Republicans. In fact, most people that are in office, when I look at some of the bills that they submit, I say the same thing. I'm like, oh, this is the quality of legislation that you're presenting? Gone. Bye. See ya. What is that? Bye, Felicia. Get the heck out. No, I reject this bill. Totally reject it. Well, it's not a bill, it's a resolution. But I reject it, right? You want me to support... Again, I'm not an anarchist. I might support legislation, but you need to come to the table with your facts in hand so that when I look at it, I go, oh, well, they got a point. There is a problem here and it does need to be solved. And it doesn't look like it's going to be resolved in the free market, right? I'm willing to do that, but you need to meet me halfway with information. All right, let's take a look at some comments. Let's get the heck out of here. Let's see here. Pay your rent? No problem. Time surfing alien says, that's correct. Pay your friggin' bills and everybody leaves you alone. Nobody comes after you if you pay your bills. It's a really simple process. Let's see here. If you use New York City as a benchmark, then government shouldn't be your path. That is true. Very true, time surfing. Oh my goodness. Keith Garrett, problem, justify my existence in this job. Solution, make up nonsense rules. Throw it at the wall and see what sticks. All the while collecting a paycheck by stolen money. Yes. And you thought I was fiery. Some of my audience members, they're even more fiery. Maybe I'll say it in a more mean way. They're more polite. That's what it is. So, okay. So now we're not being very polite. Joe says Jax for DL for Jack City Council. No. Where's that button? No city council. All right, folks, I got to get out of here. I got to go to work. You got to do what you got to do. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you guys again later. I'll probably do another episode, perhaps two. I got to look at the numbers and see what it's going to take to get me to that 30-hour threshold. So you may see another episode. You may not. We'll see. But anyway, for now, tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.